Hello everyone. Good evening. So I hope everyone had a wonderful day. Let me just share my screen. So yeah, welcome to the day 8 of full stack course. So what and all we went through in previous weeks. So we went through what is Angular and then we built a small application, right? Small project in Angular. What was the project? Student management system. And then after Angular, we learned what is React. And then we built a small application, right? Calculator app. And then we learned how to set up the Redux state management tool with a React application. So here, Angular and React, they both come in the, which one? Front end, right? But from now, we are going to study Node.js and Express.js. So both of them, they come under the backend. So since we already are familiar with what Node.js is, I'll just get through the theory part and then we'll say the practical of it. I hope all you guys have finished the both projects. It's necessary for you to finish the projects because as you do more projects, your concepts will get more clear. So coming to today, so what is Node.js? So I guess by now you guys would have been familiar with what is Node.js. So Node.js is nothing but a runtime environment. So what is a runtime environment? Say for example, the thing is every browser, right? By default, it has a JavaScript engine. So that's the reason you can execute your JavaScript in the browser. Say, for example, if I want to execute the JavaScript outside my browser, say, for example, inside my system, it's not possible, right? Because there is no engine. So what they did is, so they took the Chrome's V8 engine and then this guy, right? So what he did, he created a something called as Node.js. So with this Node.js, what we can do, we can run JavaScript on your computer. That means on your OS itself. You don't need a browser to run your JavaScript. You understood this? So and then let's see the what are the features that Node.js offers. Here you can see the first thing is it runs JavaScript everywhere. That means still now we wrote the JavaScript in React and Angular, right? Those gets executed in the browser. But now this Node.js, it gets executed in the system itself, not in the browser. Due to this, we can create websites as well as servers. You understood this part. And then we have something called as the second key point is it handles many tasks at once. That means the Node.js has a thing called as asynchronous JavaScript. We'll go through what is an asynchronous JavaScript later in the slide. As of now, you just get to know that you can run your JavaScript anywhere, and then it can handle many tasks at once. How is it possible? Due to asynchronous programming. And then also there is something called as an event loop. We'll go through in detail of what it is. So as of now, you just know the topics like which and all are available in your Node.js. There is something called as an event loop. We'll go through what is an event loop. And then since Node.js is built on Java's on Google's V8 engine, since it is fast and more scalable, most of the apps which needs more updates quickly, like chat apps and online games, and then live collabs, all this they use Node.js. Now you understood, right? So what is Node.js? Node.js is nothing but a runtime environment where you can run your JavaScript not only in the browser but outside the browser as well. Okay. So now what is asynchronous programming? So before we go through what is asynchronous programming, I want you guys to understand. So what is asynchronous programming? So since you got like you are from the CS background, so you guys would have been familiar with this. But I'll still try to break down this because as a beginner, this is hard to understand. So I'll try to break it as more like as easy as possible. So the thing is, JavaScript is synchronous and blocking language. So what do you mean by synchronous and blocking language? So what happens is, so the synchronous, you can see two diagrams here. Synchronous means JavaScript runs the code top to bottom line by line. You understood this? How does the JavaScript execute the code? You can see JavaScript is synchronous. That means it executes the code top to bottom, line by line. Okay. Say for example, the thing is you can see in the right side diagram here, you have some 4 tasks. So you have task 1, task 2, task 3, task 4. In synchronous programming, what happens is whenever the code gets executed, first it will execute task 1. Once the task 1 is done, it will go to task 2. Then it goes to task 3, then it goes to task 4. So this step-by-step process is called as synchronous. You understood what is synchronous now. Then what is blocking language? The thing is, I'll take the same diagram here. Say, for example, the task 2, it'll take some half an hour to execute. So what happens is, since JavaScript is synchronous, first it will execute task 1, then afterwards it will go to task 2. So here, if task 2 takes some like, for example, like 15 half an hour minutes, what happens is the rest of the code gets blocked. You understood this? So if this task take more time to execute, that means it won't let other part of code to get executed. That means it is blocking the execution. You understood this part? Since it is blocking the execution, this is not the ideal way of how you create apps in the real world. Say, for example, you have some recipe to cook some dish or something. So you have like usually whenever you cook something, you'll be having like step-by-step process, right? First, you need to cook the rice, then you need to chop the vegetables. So for example, you have some 20 steps. You can't follow the steps in synchronous way, right? Say for example, the first step is whenever you're cooking something. Say for example, you want to boil the rice. So boiling the rice takes, for example, like half an hour. You can't just simply sit and wait until the rice gets boiled and then you'll start chopping your vegetables, right? That doesn't work in the real world scenario. In real world, what happens? First, you'll put the rice on the cooker and then you'll start doing things in parallel, right? First, you'll start with the rice, and then as the rice is getting boiled, you'll start chopping your vegetables, and then you'll start preparing your curries and all, right? So here, what you're doing is you are running tasks in parallel. You're not following the synchronous way. The problem with synchronous way is it will block the code execution. Since it will block the code execution, it is not the ideal way on how to build an application. You understood this? In real world also, for example, you have 20 tasks. You can't do tasks step by step. What you'll do, you'll start doing all the tasks parallel. So if I want to apply the similar case in coding language, right? So what is the concept? The concept is asynchronous. You can see here, in synchronous, what happens? It is a blocking architecture. The execution of each operation is dependent on completion of the next before it. That means it goes step by step. For example, if this takes more time, right, what it will block the execution. But this is not the ideal case on how to build a real world apps. That's where asynchronous comes in place. So what is asynchronous? The thing is, say for example, this, say for example, you have this 1, 2, 3, 4 arrows, right? Think of these 4 arrows as 4 functions. Okay, these are 4 functions. So what happens is, if you know that this second task will take more time to execute, you'll make this task as asynchronous. Okay. Once you make this task as asynchronous, so what JavaScript does is, as the engine starts executing for first, it will execute the function 1. So this is synchronous, it will execute it and then it's done. So as soon as it hits on the asynchronous code, what it'll do is, it will say like, dude, your asynchronous code, I'll handle you in a separate way. Let me continue my task. And then it will come back to the execution. You understood this? This is very important to understand. So what happens is, say for example, here, you have this. So say for example, this is an asynchronous code. Okay, so what happens is, this synchronous code will start executing. As soon as the JavaScript engine reaches the asynchronous code, what happens is, it will know that this is an asynchronous code, means it will take some amount of time to execute. So what I will do, I'll keep it aside and then I will continue my execution. Okay, and then it will come again, it will start executing the synchronous code. Once again it will come across an asynchronous code, what it will do, it will keep it separate. It will say, I will take care of you later, and then it will start executing this synchronous code. So what happens is the synchronous and asynchronous code, they start executing parallelly. Did you understand this concept? This is very important to understand. So the basic thing is synchronous code will block your execution. Asynchronous code will not block your execution. So it's called as non-blocking architecture. You understand this? So whenever it comes across an asynchronous code, it will keep it in a separate place and then it will start continuing its work. And then it will come across another asynchronous code. It will keep it separate and then it will start continuing this. And then at last it will execute both parallelly. Did you understand this? So here you can see asynchronous programming in Node.js allows tasks to run in the background without blocking the rest of the code. Here you saw in the diagram, right? Here, this is not blocking the execution. As soon as it gets on the asynchronous code, it will also handle that as well as synchronous. It won't block the execution. This is the reason why we need asynchronous programming. You understand this? So asynchronous programming helps run tasks efficiently. Why efficiently? Because it doesn't block the execution. That means you can execute the code without blockage. Whereas in synchronous, it will block. You understood this? So now what happens is, how do you achieve this asynchronous programming? In JavaScript, you can achieve those by three ways. One is callback functions. Second is promises. Third is async await. Async await we saw in a React, right? In our React class, we used async await to fetch the data from the backend. And then we also went through what promises. So here we'll see what are callbacks. So for example, if you want to create any asynchronous code, this is how you create in JavaScript. How? By using callbacks, promises, and async await. Understood this? And then the main key feature why Node.js is so popular is because of non-blocking. That means it doesn't block your execution. Asynchronous code also gets executed parallelly with the synchronous code. You understood this? Here you can see in the rough diagram here, what happens is, say for example, you request for something. For example, you request for like website or something. So the server doesn't keep on waiting until the response is fulfilled. What it does is it will take your request as well as it will take the another request also. So you can see in the diagram here, so there is something called as a blocking error. That means input output, non-blocking input output. Say for example, you are executing some piece of code. For example, you're trying to read a file. So for example, if this reading file takes some 20 minutes, your rest of the code, right, it won't get executed. That means it will block the execution. Whereas if you're using asynchronous code, right, what happens? Say, for example, you know this function reading the file takes 20 minutes. What you'll do, you'll make it as asynchronous. Once you make it as asynchronous, so what does JavaScript engine do? It will run your synchronous as well as asynchronous parallelly so that it won't block your execution. Did you understand this? This is very simple as that. So what happens is in synchronous, if any of the function takes more time, it will stop the execution. Whereas in asynchronous, the asynchronous code gets handled in a separate way. We'll see how it gets handled, as well as the synchronous code gets handled parallelly. That means your both synchronous and asynchronous, they run parallelly. Did you understand this? This is how you can achieve real world. For example, we went through the example, right? You won't wait until your rice gets boiled. You'll do the work parallelly together. Understood this? You can see here. If you do the task synchronous, it will consume more amount of time. Say, for example, you're doing asynchronous task. What happens? The synchronous and asynchronous gets run parallelly, and asynchronous are handled in a separate way. So we'll go through how it gets handled. So you can see this consumes a less amount of time. Did you understand these concepts? Asynchronous and synchronous program. So I have mentioned some theory in the PPT, so you can go through the PPT. So once this is done, so we just got to know that there is something called as synchronous and asynchronous. So we just went through the theory of it. So let's now see practically in real world, how is it possible? Like how does the JavaScript engine know what is asynchronous, how to handle asynchronous, and then what is event loop? So I'll just move this here. So you can see what happens is, In JavaScript engine, there is something called as a event loop. Okay, what is an event loop? So event loop is the key main thing in a Node.js. So it acts as a heart of Node.js. The reason why it acts as a heart because without Node.js, asynchronous programming is not possible. Okay. How do you achieve asynchronous programming? You can say that through callbacks and promises. That is in a programmatic way. But in real time, in the JavaScript engine, how does it get activated through event loop? So what is an event loop? So in the name itself, you'll get to know it acts like a loop. That means it will keep on executing. So you can see, so what happens is, I'll just try to draw. For example, say you have some function. You have function 1, and then you have function 2. Okay. So now what happens is, whenever a JavaScript engine executes a function, this function gets added to the call stack. Okay. This is very hard to understand. I'm trying to break it as small as I can because these are very advanced topics. Okay, but you need to understand this so that you'll understand how the Node.js works. Okay, so in your JavaScript engine, there is something called as call stack, web API, callback queue, and then event loop. So we'll go through what is this one by one. So first, you just need to know that whenever a function gets executed or called, that function gets added to the call stack. Okay. Once it gets added to the call stack, a function will get executed. Once the function finish executing, it gets popped out of call stack. That means removed. Second, this function gets called, this function gets added, it will execute, and then it will get removed from the call stack. Okay, this is how your JavaScript engine works. This is just the step one of it. Okay, do you understand this? Whenever a function gets called, that function gets added to the call stack. Once it will finish executing, it gets removed from the call stack. Similar process occurs through all your functions. Do you understand this? This is how your call stack works in your JavaScript engine. So now what happens is, say for example, you have some asynchronous code. For example, say this F2 is an async code. Okay, this is a synchronous code. So what happens with synchronous code? It will just add to the call stack and then it will get executed and then it gets removed from the call stack. So if it is asynchronous code, what happens is this function, it doesn't get added to the call stack. Okay, what happens is this asynchronous function, it gets registered in the web API. So what is web API? You can see there is something called as set timeout, fetch, DOM APIs. So DOM APIs means your event handlers and all like on click on, mouse enter. So all this comes under your web API. So through this, you can achieve asynchronous programming. What is set timeout? So set timeout takes a time. After some time, that whatever callback function you have passed will get executed. Similar with fetch. So we went through what is fetch in this, right? In React, we used Axios. It is similar to fetch. So what happens? So this also returns promise. So what is a promise? You can see here. You can see that in asynchronous programming, what and all is there? There is a callback, there is async await, and then there is a promise. So what happens here is, whatever asynchronous programming or functions you have, they do not go into the call stack. They go into your web API. That means they register inside the web API. So here what will happen, once the event gets completed, whatever callback function you have passed, what will the web API do? It will pass it to the callback queue. Okay. So what happens is, so for example, you have used this function called a set timeout. So you guys would have been familiar with what is set timeout. After some time, it will execute. So now what happens is, for example, after 3 seconds, you'll pass a callback function, right? So what web API will do is, it will wait until the event gets completed. So once the event gets completed, whatever function you have passed as a callback, it will push it to the callback queue. Understood this? So here what happens is, here there is something called as an event loop. This is very crucial to understand. The event loop, what in the name itself, you can see that it is a loop. So what's the basic work of this is, it will keep on checking whether the call stack is empty. Okay. As soon as it finds the call stack empty, what it will do, it will take this callback function, push it to the call stack. So once whatever function is there in the call stack gets executed. To understand this, I'll go through the process again with a small diagram here. You can see here, I'll zoom in. You can see here what happens is, first, you can see here, wait, let it rerun again. What happens is, say for example, you have this function. This function, you can see set time out is an asynchronous. It will go to web API. It will push it to callback queue. Again, event loop will push it to this call stack. It will get executed. You can see in this small diagram, you can see it will come here, set time out. It will go to web API. Then what, it will pass the callback function to callback queue. What does event loop do? It will push it from here to your call stack. Did you understand this process? Visualize this, how this is how your event loop gets working in your behind the scenes in your JavaScript engine. I'll just give a quick revision of this. So what happens is all the function gets added to your call stack. Whatever function is there in the call stack, it will get executed. Once after executing, it gets removed from the call stack. But asynchronous functions, they do not get added to the call stack. They get registered inside the web API with the callback function. So what happens once the event gets completed, whatever the function you have passed as a callback, right? It will push it to the callback queue. What does the event loop do? It will be checking whether the call stack is empty. If it finds it empty, it will push this callback function, which is our asynchronous function, to the call stack, and then it will execute this. So by now we can see here we are running our synchronous as well as asynchronous parallelly. This is how you achieve this. Did you understand? So this is a synchronous. It will also execute, as well as event loop. What it will do? It will push our asynchronous function to the call stack. So with a single call stack, we are executing both synchronous and asynchronous functions. Did you understand this? This is very hard to understand at start, but I try to explain as much as possible. I'll share the PPT. You can go through the PPT. Did you understand how this one all works? So what is event loop? You can see here, we have this function. It goes to the web API. This callback again gets passed to queue. Event loop will add this to call stack. It will execute it. Then it's done. You understood this? This is how your event loop works. Okay. This is just a mechanism on to handle non-blocking. That means your asynchronous code. So now we went through what is asynchronous programming. It is a non-blocking, and then how it is able to achieve through event loop. Okay. So now let us set up what is Node.js. So I guess we already set up what is like a Node.js, right? So just go to your Google Chrome and type Node.js, and then hit on enter. Click on the first link. So here you need to download this Node.js LTS. That means long-term support. So it doesn't matter whether you have a old version. So try to install this. So if there is a old version, Node.js will replace it with a newer version. Okay. So now this part you understood, right? So now once you download this, how do you run a Node.js? How do you run a JavaScript in your OS, not in the browser? So what you first need to do is first go to the browser, your system, new, create a new folder. So node projects. Once this is done, where do you need to open this? You should open this in your VS Code, right? Go to your VS Code. So here, click on File, open folder. Then you need to select your Node.js, Node projects. So once this is done, I'll just show how you can execute Node.js in your system. So once your project is open, right? So here what we'll do is, here you need to create a new file. Okay, here I'll just create some demo.js. It's up to you. You can create anything you want. So once this is created, I'll just console log some statement here. Okay, I'll just log what I've logged. What I'll do, I'll just print some statement. You can give whatever statement you want. So how do I run this? If you have a browser, you'll just, in the browser, if you go to inspect, you'll get the console log. But here, this is not a browser, right? This is your own system. So how do you run here? You need to run it in your terminal. Go to your terminal, new terminal. Okay. Once you go here, just a minute. Terminal, new terminal. It's taking some time to load. So by that time, we'll go through what is a Node.js shell is. So to go through what is Node.js shell, you just go to your Windows and then type CMD, command prompt. So here just type node. So once you hit on node, you will get this kind of right arrow icon. So whenever you get this right arrow icon, you can access your node shell. So what is node shell here? So here I have mentioned, with the help of node shell, what you can do is there is something called as REPL. So what is REPL? Read, eval, print, loop. So what happens is Node.js will provide you a shell where you can run your small JavaScript expressions here. Say for example, if I run 3 plus 5, you will get 8. Okay, if I do, for example, like hello string plus, I'm trying to concatenate a string, you can see it gets concatenated. So this is just a shell on how to run your Node.js, but this is not usually used whenever you want to build a project. So while building project, you need to run it in your VS Code. I'll just try to close and open this again. Open your VS Code. So here you need to open your terminal. This terminal. So now you can see I got my node projects. So now how do I run this? This is not a browser, right? So how do you run this? First, the command to run your JavaScript in your system is node and then file name demo.js. So once you run this, so what happens is you can see my code is getting executed in the terminal. You can see here. This is how you run your JavaScript in your system with this command node demo.js. What is demo.js? This is my file name. Did you understand this? Say for example, I'll add something. I'll create two variables. Let num1 is equals to 10. Let num2 is equals to 20. So now what I'll do, let sum is equals to num1 plus num2. So now what I'll do, I'll try to print this sum in the console. Okay, now if I run this, what will I get? I should get 10 plus 20 here, right? So now let's run and see. Node demo.js. Now what did I get? 10 plus 20, 30. You can see that I am successfully running my JavaScript inside my system, not in the browser, inside the system. Okay. Through what? Through node. What is the command? Node filename.js. Say, for example, if you want to create a node project, right? What is the command? I have mentioned in the PPT. The command is npm init -y. So this is on how to just run your JavaScript file in your Windows. Say, for example, if you want to create a node project, so how do you do that? So I'll come here, I'll just remove this. I'll just delete this file. So here what I'll do, I'll create a new project here. Okay, what I'll do, just create a new folder, demo project 1, demo project, that's it. So then what I need to do, I need to match my path, right? So what is the command? cd space tab. So now once I go to my demo project, I need to create a node project. So what is the command? You can see in the PPT, npm init space init space minus y. So now I'll run the command here. npm init minus y. So once you hit on enter, what happens is Node.js will create a, so this npm will create a mini project for you. So now you can see if I open this, you can see I got package.json. So what is package.json? We went through what is package.json, right? All your node modules gets added here. So as of now, there is no more node module, so you don't have anything. But as you install any node modules, it will get added inside your package.json. You understand this? So now we will go through what and all the Node.js has provided. The name is, so what is our package name? It is demo project. So what is the version? It is 1. And then it will say that there is something called as main. And this main requires a file called as index.js. Is there index.js file? No, right? So we should have to manually create it. So go to your demo project, click on new index.js. This is necessary because in the package.json, we have something called as index.js. So whatever file name is there, the same file we should create in our project. Okay, once this is done, all your code gets written inside your index.js. This name is fixed because this may, so whatever file name you have should match your whatever name you have in your package.json. So once this is done, so I'll just log something. My first node project. So now how do I run this? Similar. Now you can see I'm successfully getting whatever is there inside my index.js. Okay. This is how you run your node application. And then how to create your node project. And so this npm init minus y. Do you understand this part? npm init minus y. This is how you create your node project. So once this is done, so now we went through how to use set up a node project, right? We'll go through something called as file system. So you guys, since you know Python, so this is similar to that, but here there is a small difference. We'll go through what is the difference. So what are file systems? So you know what is file system, right? The thing is, in JavaScript, which is written in the browser, right, which gets executed in the browser, they can't do file operations. But the JavaScript which you execute in your system, they can do file operations. Okay, so what is file system? So with the file system, you can interact with files. That means you can create, write, update, delete, and then rename files or like however you want. So for example, any action in the file system, it contains of two types. One is asynchronous way, one is synchronous way. So what is synchronous way? That means it will block the execution. What is asynchronous way? It doesn't block the execution. Okay, we'll go through how do we do the both things. So say for example, inside my this itself, first what it is, what is the first topic we're going to cover? File system. So first, let us see how to read and write. So in reading, you have two types. One is synchronous way. So how do you do synchronous way? First, you need to import your file module. So this is a inbuilt module. This is the syntax on how to import. Okay, first come to your code, const fs is equals to, you have an inbuilt function called as require. Using require, you need to specify which module, fs module. Okay, once this is done, you'll be able to access your file module. Now, first you need to call the require. You need to pass which module you want to access, then it will return a file system module. So now inside here, I'll create a new file. Inside my demo project, right? Create a new file, info.txt. This is a txt file, that's it. So now here what I'll do is, I'll just write some random code. Okay. So now there is some data inside my info.txt. So now I need to read this data inside my index.js. So how do I achieve that? First is There are two ways, right? We went through what the first is the asynchronous way and then the synchronous way. Let's just see how to do it in synchronous way, and then we'll go through the asynchronous. In synchronous way, first fs dot, you need to do what you want to do. Read file sync. You can see here. Read file sync means it is synchronous. If there is nothing means it is asynchronous. Okay, first synchronous. Here you need to pass with what is your file name. So what is my file name here? It is info.txt. So after this, you need to pass something called as an encoding. You can see here. So the most common file format for encoding is UTF-8. So what I'll do, I'll just pass UTF-8 here. UTF-8. After this, what happens? So this, since this is a function, it will return something, right? So I will store that inside my variable. Const data is equals to. So now what I'll do, I'll just log this data. So file data, comma, data. So now how do I run this? I'll come here, node index.js. Now you can see I'm successfully able to read my file. Where is this data present? This data is present inside my info.txt, right? So now here what you do, first step is you need to import. Once you import, what you need to do, you need to use .read file sync, and then you need to specify the path name and then what is the encoding format. So and then you'll get the data and then you'll console log the data. So now if I run it again, you can see I'm able to access my file data. This is how you read in a synchronous way. So how do you do it in an asynchronous way? In asynchronous way, nothing. What you'll do is you'll pass a callback function here. Okay, this is synchronous way. So how do you do it in an async way? The same syntax, I'll just copy this. Here you need to pass a callback function. So what is the callback function? A normal function. So here I'm doing a callback function is a function which is passed as a parameter to another function. Okay, here every callback function while you're reading, it takes two files. So one is two parameters. So one is error and data. Okay. So now since I get error and data, first I need to check if there is an error. So if there is an error, I will console log error, can't read the file. If there is data, in else I'll just log the data. Okay, this is how you do. I'm writing it side by side so that you'll get to know the difference on how to read the file in synchronous and asynchronous way. In asynchronous way, you need to pass a callback function. Okay, so here you'll get access to two parameters. So one is error and then data. So first you need to check a condition if there is an error. So for that, if there is an error, I'll just log error reading file. If there is no error, where should I do? I'll put it inside the else. Else, I'll log file data async. I'll just log the data. So now here I'll comment this synchronous. I'll try to run only the asynchronous code. You can see first you need to pass a callback function. It is the same syntax, okay? Don't get confused. Same syntax, you'll pass an asynchronous function, then check for an error, and then print the data. So now if I run this, I'm not getting anything, right? Why? Info.txt, let me see. It is there. You can see the thing is I've used the same function name here. I need to remove this dot read file. So if you have read file as sync means it is a synchronous. If you have only read file means it is asynchronous. So now I'll try to run this again. So now you can see read file async, I'm able to get the data. So this is how you fetch the file data through a synchronous way. This is how you fetch through the synchronous way. Okay. Added the code inside the PPT also. You can go through this. So now let's go through how to write the files. Now we went through how to read the files, right? Similar thing with the write files. So first we'll go through the synchronous way. What is that? How do you access file system? Fs dot write file sync. So here you need to specify the file name. So here I'll create, you can just specify whatever file name you want. For this purpose, I'll just create something called as, what can I name it as? Secret.txt. Hmm. Coding.txt. Okay. So now this is on how you create a file using synchronous way. This is the syntax. First, you need to specify write file sync and then what is the file name. So once this is done, you can see in the PPT, you need to specify the data. What data you want to add inside the file. Okay. Here what I'll do first, specify the file name. Second is what data you want to add inside the file. So this is coding file with codes, coding information. Yeah, so now once I run this, you can see what happens. So you can see on the right side, there is no file called as coding.txt, right? As soon as I run this, you can see what happens. I will do node index.js. You can see here, a file gets generated, coding.txt. Once I go in, you can see this data gets added. So how am I adding this data? I'm creating write file sync. First, I'm passing the file name and then the data inside the file. Okay, this is the syntax on how to create a file. So how do you create the file in async way? So this is the synchronous way, right? So how do you create in an asynchronous way? In asynchronous way, you do the same thing. What is fs dot write file? You can see just the write file means if there is nothing means it is asynchronous. If there is something, it is synchronous. So here what you will do inside the write file, first you'll give the file name. So here you will give it as react.txt. Then you need to pass a data. This is React file I'm creating. Then you need to give a callback function because it is an asynchronous, right? You can see in the PPT. This is the synchronous way on how to create a file. This is asynchronous way. You'll put a callback function which contains this error parameter. And then create an arrow function. First check if there is an error, then log there is an error. Okay, so now I'll run this. You can see there is no file called as react.txt. As soon as I run this, the file gets generated. How do I run? Node text.js. Once I hit on enter, you can see a file has been created, react.txt. So once I click on this, you can see where is this data here? I'm adding here, right? So however, I'm creating the file name, the data, and then I'm passing a callback function. If there is a callback function means it is asynchronous. If there is no callback function, then it is a synchronous. Okay. So this is how you create your files and write your files in synchronous and asynchronous way. Okay. Similar way, you have something called as mkdir. So what is mkdir? This is how you create a directory. And then you have something called as rmdir, which is how to remove the directory. So we'll just go through one of the command on how to. So still now we saw how to create a file. So how do you create a folder? So directory means nothing but your folder. So you have the same command. fs.mkdir, you need to pass the folder name. Then it returns, and then you need to pass an callback function. Callback function means this is an asynchronous code. So where does asynchronous code gets executed? Inside the callback queue, then event loop adds it inside the call stack. So now let's create a directory here. So now these are all just the files, right? I'll create a directory. So how do I do that? So first ff.mkdir. So here you need to specify the folder name. So what I'll do is folder name I'll just create something called as node. Okay, this is my folder name. You can say I'll create node one. There is no folder called as node one here. So then you need to pass a callback function, and then you need to check the error. So if there is an error, I need to log error, else you can log any statements. So now I just want to check whether it's creating or not. Here you can see there is no folder called as node. So, but with mkdir, I can create the folder. So as soon as I run this file, how do I run? You can see a directory gets created. Directory means your folder. You can see your node one gets created inside your node project. So this is how you create a directory. Say, for example, if you want to remove the directory, if you want to use rmdir. So here only I'll just create what I'll do instead of m, I'll do rm request dot rmdir. So now if I run this, you can see this node one gets deleted. So now it is there, right? So I'll run this file again. You can see it got deleted. So this is how you create your directory and then remove your directory inside your Node.js. So both are asynchronous because we are passing a callback function. Okay. So now we'll go through what are path modules. So path modules means, say for example, so basically what is a path? For example, if I go to my desktop, I'll go to my node projects. If I copy here, right, you can see this is my path, right? This is what you call as path inside your system. So say for example, if I want to work regarding these paths, in Node.js, there is an inbuilt module called as path modules. Okay. Through these path modules, you can work with your paths. So how do I do that? So first we'll come here and comment this also. So now everything is commented, right? So now we went through what is file systems. So now we'll go through what are path modules. So what is path? Path is basically nothing but your directory or file location. So this is my file location, right? Similar way, if you want to work with the file locations, you need to use the path module. So how do you use that? First, you need to import it. So what is the syntax? Const path is equals to require path. So what I'll do, I'll just do the same thing. Const path is equals to require path. You can see it suggested because it is an inbuilt. So once I do this, what I'll do is I'll just console log and see what and all are available inside the path. So how do I do that? I'll just do log. I'll log the path itself. So now when I run here, right, you can see what Node.js will do is it will show what and all are access. You can see I can access these many things inside my path. Okay, you can see there is something called as join, relative, dir, name, base name. Okay, as you build a complex project, you need to understand this and also as of now, you just need to know some key features which we'll commonly use. Okay, so now this is how you get the access to path. So in Node.js, what happens is, so there are two inbuilt variables where if you want to access the current path name and then current directory, the syntax is first you need to give a double underscore. You can see there are two names here. So first I'll select file name. I'll log again double underscore and then dir name. So what Node.js will do is, so this is accessible to you by default. So whenever I console log this, let us see what we'll get. Node index.js. You can see it is showing me my current file name and then current directory name. Okay, this is how you play with your paths in your Node.js. So for example, if you want to fetch the current file name, right? So how do you do that? Through path module and then using this underscore file. So this is by default, that is inbuilt. So whenever I console log this, you can see it is giving me the full path name. Say for example, if I want just the folder name, so I'll just log this. You can see it just gave me the folder name. That means nothing but the directory. So now in path modules, you have some kinds of different methods to access. So the most common one is base name and dir name and then parse. So we'll go through what is one by one. So I'll just add it here itself. So what I'll do, so now you know how to get current file name and directory name, right? To underscore. So now I don't need this. I'll just work on my file name. So what I'll do, I'll just wrap my path dot what is base name. So once I wrap this inside my base name function, so once I log this, so what happens is you can see it will just give me my base name. So what is my base name? Index.js. So previously it gave the full path, but I don't want the full path. I just want the base name. So once I put it, this file name inside my base name, it will give my current base name. Say for example, if I want just the directory name. So how do I get that? So if you use double underscore dir name, you'll get the full thing. I don't want the full path. I just want the current path of the directory. So how do I do that? You just log path dot dir name and then what you'll pass? File name. So once I run this again, you can see I'm getting my, you can see here, I'm getting my base name and then the directory name. You got this? How am I getting my base name? So if you want, so say for example, even though you're getting confused, if you do path dot, right, you can see how many functions, inbuilt functions I'm able to access here. These are all the inbuilt functions which I can work on my path. So as of now, we just saw how to work with base name and dir name. Say for example, if I want some extra data from just my file name. So what happens is, if I just log my file name, right, I'll just show you this, log file name. So what do I get here if I run this? I'll just get my file name. Say for example, if I want to get to know some extra data regarding this path, for that also there is an inbuilt function. That function name is parse. Okay, how do I use that? Go to your code. So inside this, you need to wrap it. So how do you do that? From here, path dot, what does it? Parse, right? Wrap it. You're basically using path dot parse, adding inside the file name and then console logging it. So now you will see once I run this, you'll get to know so much information regarding this path. Okay, so how do you run this? Node index dot. Now you can see, okay, so first, what is the root? It is C. What is the directory name? This is my directory name. So what is the base? Index.js. So what is the extension? .js. So what is the name? Index. Through this, what happens is, say for example, if you're building some server, right? Through this, you can access some extra data regarding your file names for the path module. I've mentioned everything inside the PPT. You can go through it. The second is there is something called as an event and event emitter. So we know what are events. You know what are events, right? So events are nothing but, for example, like on click, for example, like mouse enter, mouse over, hover. So these are all your events. So, but these are inbuilt events. Okay. Say, for example, if you want to create your own event. So how do you do that in Node.js? What I'll do, I'll just minimize this. I will comment this. So now events. So what are events? Events means some action has been occurred. Say, for example, there is a click event. That means you're saying to the browser that some action will occur. That means someone may click here. You have some event called as an on change. That means you're saying to the browser that there may be some changes here. So what are these? All these are inbuilt events. Say, for example, if I want to create my own event. So how do I do that? In Node.js, you have a package called as events. So how do you get these events? You need to use require. So here what happens is, in previously, as soon as you put on require, you need to access the path name, right? If you put fs, you can access the file module. But here what happens is, whenever you use an event, this event will return a class. Using this class, you need to create an instance. Okay, so if you guys are from the Java background, so you guys would have been familiar with. So whenever you want to use a class, what you need to do, you need to create an instance. Okay, through instance, you need to access its methods. This is the process, right? So how do I do that? First, you need to import. So what? Const event emitter is equals to require. Here what you will pass? You can see Node.js, it's suggesting that there is something called as event. So I'll just click on here. So what this is, this event return, here only it will say event emitter class. So how do you access class? You can't directly access the class, right? You need to create an object for the class. So how do you create an object in JavaScript? Const event is equals to new event emitter. Sorry. First, whenever you import this, you will get an access to class. So through this class, you need to create an instance. So now through this event, I can access the events. Okay. So what happens is you can see I have mentioned here. So events in Node.js are signals which indicates that something has happened. Understood? Those are nothing but your events. That means you're saying that something may happen here. So through event emitter class, what you can do, you can create and listen to event. Okay. So first we'll see how do we create an event. So how do you create an event? Through a property called as emit. Okay. So first, once I got this instance, first I will create an event. So these are your custom events. That means these are not your built-in events. So you are creating your own events here. Okay. So what is the syntax? Event.emit, and then you need to specify the event name. This is my custom event. Okay. This is how you create an event. You guys would have been familiar with the syntax, right? In Angular, we used something similar to this way using the output emitter, right? There also we created an event and then we emitted that event. Similar way, here also we are emitting an event name. Once you emit an event name, you need to access this. Okay. How do you listen to this event? For example, say if I created a click event, there should be some kind of function which triggers when the click, click event gets executed, right? That means there should be some function which listens to that. Similar way, whenever you emit an event, there should be a function which listens to this event so that whenever there is changes in this, it will re-execute it. So how do you do that? Similar way, how you can emit, there is an inbuilt function in the event which is called as on. So what on does is, it will listen for your event. Okay. This on will take a callback function. Since it has a callback function, that means this is an asynchronous code. Okay. So this is one of the way how you can achieve asynchronous code. Okay, through callbacks. So what I did is, so basically I created an event here. I emitted it. So now I need to listen to this event. So what I'll do, I'll just listen to my custom event. So how do I do that? Event dot on. Okay. So what does on do? It will listen. The first parameter is you need to pass your event name. So what is my event name? Custom event. So I'll just copy and paste it. Okay. Once I do this, I need to give a callback function, right? Because why? Because this is an asynchronous. So now what I will do, I'll just log custom event. So now once I run this, you can see what will happen. You can say custom event trigger. That means this event kept on emitting. Once it emitted, what happened through on? I catch that event and then I'm console logging. Say for example, if I want to pass some data through my emit. So how do you do that? Come here, you need to pass as parameters. So for example, I'll pass my name, it's Shiva. So now I need to access this through the listener. So how do you do that? Inside callback, you will get the parameter. para1, or else I'll just keep it as name. And now I'll just console the name. So now if I read on this, what happens? You can see I'm able to access my name. Okay, this is very important to understand. Events are nothing but you are signaling that something may happen here. So these are your custom events, not your inbuilt events. So what are your inbuilt events like click and all are your inbuilt events. So how do you do that? First, you need to use require. This will return an event emitter class. So how do you access something inside a class? You need to create an instance. So first you need to create an event and then you need to emit it using the event name. And then if you want, it's optional, you can pass the parameters. So once this part is done, what you need to do, every event there should be having something called as a listener, so that when this gets triggered, it will listen and then execute this code. So how is it possible? Through event.on. So here this will take the custom event name and a callback function. So whenever this event gets emitted, it will go to this callback function and execute it. So this is the process on how do you create events in your Node.js. Understand this? So I know it will be confusing at the starting because it's very less time to understand this tough concepts, but you need to just go through the concepts so that, for example, if you revise in the future, it will be easier for you to revisit this. Okay. So now before going through what is HTTP module, we'll go through there is some package called as NodeMon. Okay. So what this NodeMon does this will read load automatically. So here you can see after every changes, what am I doing? I'm typing this again and again, right? This is a huge headache when I'm building up big applications. So for that, what I need to do, I need some kind of tool where whenever I do some changes, it will automatically rerun. Okay, I don't have to manually type this command again and again. So for that, the Node.js already has a package called as NodeMon. So how do I get this NodeMon? Through npm. So what is npm? We went through what is npm, right? npm is nothing but your node package manager. You can compare this to your pip with the Python. So whatever packages you want to work with the Node.js, you need to use npm. Okay, through npm, you can install packages. So once you install packages, you can work inside the packages inside your Node.js application. I'll just show how the npm looks like. I guess we went through what is npm in React itself. You can see here, this is my node package manager. So here you can see I can I can search for any packages. So now I just want something called as NodeMon. So I'll search NodeMon. So once I search here, you can see there is something called as NodeMon. So I'll click on this. You can see this is the command on how do you install NodeMon. Let us see how many downloads are there. You can see these are your weekly downloads. Okay. You can see here, so many people are using this package. And then you'll just get the information on what is NodeMon and then how to use it. And then what are all the features, how do you configure. So this documentation and all, you can go through this in your free time. So as of now, I just need to install this. So how do you install? npmi nodemon. You can copy here or else click on this. It gets copied. Now come to your file. Here I need to copy paste it. npmi nodemon. So I is nothing but your short form to install. So once you can see in package.json, there is nothing here, right? You can see here, there is nothing here. So see what happens as soon as I hit enter, a new array gets generated called as dependency. Inside that, this node1 will be attached. So now you can see there is nothing here. See what happens when I hit on enter. Once I hit on enter, what does the npm do? Node package manager, it will install this nodemon. After it will install, you can see it's installing here. It will add it inside the dependencies. You can see there is nothing here. Wait until this gets installed. I think it will take some time. So we'll go through the PPT. So now you can see what is Node.js is your nothing but your node package manager. So say, for example, you want to check your node version and npm version. So what are the commands? So here, go to your command prompt, cmd. So here, if you want to check your node version and npm version, these are the commands. So first is node -v. It is a short form for version. You can see this is my node version. If I want to check my npm version, npm -v. This is how you can check your node versions so that you can check, you can get to know whether it has been updated to the latest one or not. And now I'll check my, it is still executing. So let it run. So by that time, let's go through what is HTTP module. So we went through these modules, right? So first is file module, which is an inbuilt module. Through this, you can read and write files in asynchronous and synchronous way. Then we went through path modules. So through path modules, you can access your current path name, directory name, and some extra data regarding your paths. Then we went through what are event emitters, and then how do you emit and how do you listen to the event. Okay, and then how do you pass the parameters. Okay, then there is another inbuilt module called as an HTTP module. So what this HTTP module does is, so this, you're familiar with this word, right? HTTP. So what is HTTP? HTTP is nothing but your hypertext transfer protocol. So this is on how your client server architect communicate with each other. Okay. So here you can see if you want to create a server, right? You have to use something called as HTTP module. Okay. This is nothing but your protocols on how your client. So what is your client? Your browser. What is your server? Your backend. So since we are doing the backend, which is Node.js, so we will see how do you create a server. Okay. So there are two ways to create a server in Node.js. So one is using HTTP module. Second is using Express. So tomorrow we'll see how through like how to create the same thing within the Express. So this you just need to know that there is an inbuilt module called as an HTTP through which you can create server and handle the request. But this is not the ideal way on how do you create an your server in your real-time application. In real-time applications, say for example, you're working in any company which uses Node.js, you use a package called as Express. Okay. So now let me see whether my NodeMon has been, yeah, now my NodeMon has been successfully installed. So how do I check that? Inside your package.json, you can see inside the dependencies, NodeMon has been added, and then this is the version of the NodeMon. Okay. So now what happens is, what do you need NodeMon? So NodeMon is nothing but a package which reruns your application. So you don't have to manually rerun it again. So how do you achieve that? So first you need to go to your project. So inside demo project, which is the file I'm writing the code, this one, right? So what I'll do here, come to your terminal. This is lagging. So come to your terminal. So here what you need to do, the command to run your project with NodeMon is NodeMon and then your file name index.js. So now here you can see what happens here is, so NodeMon will automatically run this. So now you can see waiting for the changes before restart. So now what I'll do, I'll just comment this. And now you can see it has restarted. So now what I'll do, I'll just create let sum is equals to 20 plus 35. And then I will log. You can see I got 55. But I'm not using again index.js, right? So what's happening here? NodeMon will check whether there are any changes. You can see it's saying waiting for changes. So as soon as there is some changes here, it will restart your server. So you don't have to repeatedly type index.js, index.js. So once you start this, once you run this application through NodeMon, how do you run NodeMon index.js? So what NodeMon will do, it will restart your server continuously whenever there is some changes. Now, for example, if I add something log, You can see it will automatically restart and re-execute it. Now log again. So now what I'll do, you can see again it will automatically restart and rerun it again. Okay. This is the use of nodemon. It will just restart your server automatically. So now at last we'll just go through what is HTTP module, and then we'll create a server, and then we'll see how to send a request from your backend. So for that, what I'll do, I'll comment this. I'll remove this everything. I'll start it from fresh. So now you need to export the HTTP module. So how do you do that? Const HTTP is equals to, how do you import something? Require, right? Require HTTP. Okay, this is how you import the HTTP module. So this is a built-in module. Okay. Once you do this, so what happens is you need to create a server. So how do you know which method you have to use? So for that, you just need to type HTTP dot. So here you can see the first method itself, create server request. So you have many different methods. So first, since we want to create server, there is already a method called as create server. So I'll just hit enter and then brackets. Okay. Once this is done, what I need to do, I need to first give a callback function. You can see here, once create server is done, you need to pass a callback function. This callback function will be having two parameters. So one is request and then response. We went through what is request and response, right? In the day one itself. So whatever the client sends, it is request. Whatever the server sends, it is the response. So here we will access inside the callback function itself. Okay. So what I'll do first, callback function. Inside you will be able to access request and response. And then this is an arrow function. Okay. Once this is done, what I need to do, there is an inbuilt function called as end. So end is a shortcut to send and end. So what is send and end? So whatever res, so what is res? Res is a response, right? So whatever res dot end, whatever I'll add it here, first it will send this data and then it will end the connection. It is necessary to end a connection or else it will be open always. So whenever a response has been sent, the connection will be ended. So you can do separately, but there is an inbuilt method already called as end. So what it will do, it will send as well as end your connection. So how do I send something? So for that, how do you send something from the backend? Not through the request. Request is something you get from the client. So how do you send it from the server? It is called as response. So what I will do, response dot, you can see there are so many methods you can access here. Okay, but I need to use only end. So what does end do? Data from backend. Okay, what I'm doing is I'm sending a response from the backend. For that, first you need to import HTML, HTTP, and then create a server, pass a callback function. So this callback function will be able to access two parameters. So what are those parameters? Request and response. Since this is a backend, so what should I send? I need to send a response dot end. So what does end do? It will send as well as end the connection. So now once this is done, I need to run this, right? Without running this, how can some software can send a request to this? For that, it needs to run in some kind of port, right? So how do I do that? Every create server will return a server. So how do you access that? You need to create a variable. Const server is equals to HTTP server. This is the syntax. Once you create a server, it will return a server. Through this server, I will listen. Okay, there is an inbuilt method called as listen. So what does it do? Into server dot, you can see first method only, it's listen. Say for example, if you're getting, for example, you don't remember these functions and all, you just need to just go and type dot. VS Code only will suggest what kind of functions are available. You click on listen. The first parameter is, you can see the VS Code only suggests what is the first parameter is your port number. You can give whichever port number you want. So by default, I'll give it 3000. Okay. Second is a callback function. I'll just log server running in port. Sorry, I need to put it inside a string. Server running means port 3000. Okay, now what happens is, so when I run, you can see since I'm using node-mon, I don't have to rerun it again. So what happens? It will only restart. I'll try to run it again, node-mon index.js. You can see now my server is running inside the port. So how did I achieve this? Using server.listen. The first parameter is your port number. The second parameter is your callback function. Inside the callback function, I'm simply logging this message so that I know my port is running successfully. So how do I access my server? I need to go to this port. So how do I go to that? Go to your Chrome. Here, type localhost 3000. Look on, you can see I'm getting data from backend. Yeah, this is how you can achieve data from the backend. So now you can give a round of applause because you created your own backend server. So this is how you create your own server. Okay, first you need to import HTTP. Through HTTP, you need to create a server and then give a callback function to response you are sending the data. And then you need to listen. What does this listen take? The first parameter is 3000. Second parameter is callback. So don't get confused like how do I know first I need to pass port, you need to pass function. As you write the code, you will get familiar with it. Okay. At starting, it may be strange, but as you write the code, you'll get familiar with it. Okay. So now once I run this through nodemon, what happens? My server gets started at this port number. So how do I access this? Go to your Chrome, 3000. So now what will happen is, if I change this data, right, data from backend, Node.js. So now what happens? Nodemon will restart this. I go here, let it restart. It's taking much time because my internet is slow. So what I'll do, I'll just close and I'll rerun it. So now you can see it's rerunning again. So now if I refresh this, you can see I'm getting this. Okay. Say for example, so here you can see in response.end, I'm sending the string data. Say for example, if I want to send a HTML itself. So how do I do that? You just need to add your HTML tags. It's simple as that. So how do I add? I'll create h1 tag. I'll come here, I'll close my h1 tag. Slash h1. So now if I rerun this, let it rerun. Since my internet is slow, so I have to keep on restarting this, or else it will work automatically. So now here, for rerun this, you can see I'm getting a h1 tag. So how am I sending this? I'm sending this from the backend because this is a response. If you want to check, how do you check it? Go to your right click, inspect. So inside inspect, you need to go to your network. Once you go to your network, you need to refresh it. You can see here, these are the requests you are getting. One is called as localhost. You can see which method it is, get method. This is the status code. So you are familiar with status code, right? So every request and response cycle will have a status codes. So you guys would have studied this in your classes itself. And you can see there are so many metadata and all defined here. You can see here, there is something called as initiator timing preview response. If you go to preview, it will show how does the data gets displayed. If you go to response, you can see what response I'm getting here. I'm getting a h1 tag. So since the browser can understand h1 tag, it will execute this. Okay. How do you access this? Go to your inspect and then network. Inside network, by default, it will get empty. You need to refresh this so that the request gets sent again. Once you get the response, you can see inside the response what and all is there. Say, for example, if I want to send some p tag also with this, I'll just go here. I'll create a p tag and then close it. So now what I'll do, sorry, I need to close it inside the class. So now, if I run this and then refresh again, you can see what happens. I'll go to this local host. You can see with H1 tag, I'm also getting my P tag. So this is how you check your response. So, for example, you're developing any real world applications, right? This is how you check whatever response and whatever request you're sending. Okay. So now say, for example, if you want to send some request through your, for example, I'll create a path called as about. Once I go to about, I need some about data. So how to achieve that? So what are you sending from here? It's called as request, right? I need to handle it inside here. So what I will do first, I will check here. If request dot URL is equals to slash about, I'll send about data. How do you send? Response dot end. Okay, so now what happens is, so go here, just a minute, I'll restart this again. So now here what happens is, so when I click on this, right, I'm getting this data. Where is this data? Inside my, by default, I'm sending this. If I hit on this path, right, where does this path be accessible? This is a request. So I will access inside request.url. I'm checking if this is accessible. If this is accessible, I'm sending this data. So now you can see here, if I do slash about, I'll get my about data. Okay. This is how you create your own server and then you listen to it and then how you can access through your local host. Okay, tomorrow we'll go through what is Express.js and then we'll create a REST API project. So as of now, it's done. If you have any doubts, you can ask in the comment section. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. So, students, I hope you all marking your attendance. Kindly mark your attendance without any fail. So, yeah, we are winding up for the day. Thank you all. Good night.